Hello and welcome to Marlins After Dark. Why? Because no team keeps you up late at night like the Miami Marlins. I'm your host, Sean Millerick, joined tonight by Jeremiah Geiger of Marlins IX. Frog in my throat, sorry there. And we'll get the ball rolling. Busy week, busy couple weeks in Marlins news. Dive into some Peter Bendix talk tonight. And our beloved manager picked up some hardware. We'll talk a little Skip winning Manager of the Year as well and just get into it. Maybe even Josh Bell. Again, busy couple weeks out of nowhere. But Jeremiah, how you doing? And start that. That's the first hard question for you. How you doing tonight, Jeremiah?
Doing great, Sean. Doing great. Great to be back on the podcast and talk some Marlins baseball on this late Tuesday night. Gonna head into Wednesday morning, but great to be talking some ball with you.
Glad to have you on board. So let's start with Skip before diving into Bendis, since that's the news of the day. Skip Schumaker winning Manager of the Year. I think we pretty deservedly so. I think we kicked that around during the season. That it was always seemed to me that it was between him and the Arizona. Terry Lavillo. I'm getting that group down there. But once he didn't make the finalists, this really felt like a lock that Schumacher would be walking away with it. I read it a lot about on ESPN about maybe Craig Counsell pulling it down, just kind of as almost a career achievement type sense that he's always in the running for it. Maybe he'll finally get it, but I wasn't really seeing it. I thought this was Skips in the cakewalk, and it was a close vote certainly, but I was glad to see him be able to walk away with it. Any takeaways for you from that? How anything particularly meaningful to see Marlins manager walk away with this award?
Oh, certainly it's meaningful. It was just an awesome all around year for Skip, being this his first year as a manager and taking the Marlins to the playoffs, something that hadn't been done in a full season since 2003. To be able to do that, and really deal with a lot of adversity throughout the year. You had Sandy Alcantara go down with injury and really didn't pitch like his Cy Young caliber season of a year ago. And just to be able to manage the bullpen and manage the lineup day in and day out with all these different pieces and injuries in the rotation, even, definitely well deserved. Wouldn't have been shocked if Torey Lovullo had won it. Obviously, taking the Diamondbacks to the World Series, huge achievement. But all credit to Skip. Super happy for him to get that recognition, on a league wide level like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it. I thought there was a real risk as Arizona kept winning playoff series. I'm like, oh damn it! This award's going to get snaked away from Skip. I thought it was Skip's when even both teams made the postseason, but once Arizona advanced and the Marlins did not, I kind of assumed that would be it. And then it was just between Arizona. It was between Atlanta rather and Milwaukee and Miami, and so two teams that I think had more disappointing seasons than the Marlins did. The Marlins the prize was kind of felt very much at least in the national media, like to have the winning season, to get to the playoffs. And for me personally, that was the prize. It was great to see them finally be able to do that and get over a couple of those hurdles. So it's great to see. And as you said, really felt that players are buying into him throughout the season. Every little move, big contrast, from the last couple of years. Don Mattingly himself was one of the Marlins 4 Manager of the Year winners, but that always seemed to have a little more of that short season asterisk to it, and you'd never really heard that this season. Anytime that Skip did a move that seemed to pull off, pulled the right strings, and not that Donnie didn't do that in 2020, but you really felt that there was just this different level of buy-in that you hadn't seen, certainly in this area, in this market, in quite some time. But Skip, 4th Marlins manager to win the Manager of the Year award, and just a little fun trivia. Since coming into the league, no team has won more Manager of the Year awards than the Marlins. There's a couple kind of stats here with Marlins, the Marlins organization and Manager of the Year awards, where it's you can kind of, I guess, decide if it's a good thing or not with it.
Yeah.
So how do we have to have since 1993? Only no one. I think the Giants have them tied, and I think that's I think that's it. I think that's their only real peer in that respect. And certainly since 1993, the Marlins had the most different candidates winning the award. Four awards, 4 different managers pulling it down. And in Marlins history, 7 different people who have managed the Marlins have won the award at some point in time. Let's see, if I rattle this off here, Jeff Torborg won it in 1990, I believe. The Jim Leland has won the award a couple of times, won it a couple of times with the Pirates and once with the Tigers. Yeah, so I think he's a 3-time winner of the award.
And in 2 different leagues.
Yeah, and in 2 different leagues. It's kind of a little Luis Arias in that respect, pulling down hardware, and then totally blanking on my third. But there's Ozzie Guillen. Ozzie Guillen won with the White Sox, and then had his tumultuous Marlins tenure.
What year did he win with the White Sox?
I think it was for the World Series trip, so I think it was 2005. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they've employed a lot of winners of that award, and it's Skip himself said today it's a staff award, it's a team award, but so certainly some circumstances of seasons usually attach themselves to that award. But still, great to see him get it, feather in his cap, and it's particularly if you think about how players have seemed reticent to sign here. So you head into another offseason, free agency, there's concerns about the ballpark, sure, concerns about payroll, but part of it's been I think the direction of the team, and Skip seems like a big advantage in that direction of the card that the Marlins can play. That this seems to be a manager that players genuinely want to play for, and respond to, and so as long as he's here in South Florida, you hope to see that pay off. For the club.
I think he established that culture, like that culture that everybody has bought in. And I think, the diehard fan has bought into that culture too. Bruce Sherman, the owner, has bought into that culture, and everybody kind of has this mentality now of we tasted the postseason, we want more. How are we going to, have this continuity of competitiveness going into 2024? So, like I said, all credit to Skip for really coming in and establishing that culture off the bat of, hey, this is what we do. And honestly, expecting to win. Like, I think from day one, he came into spring training saying, this isn't a job I'm coming into where I'm expecting to lose 90 games. No, I'm going to compete every day and make the playoffs. And that's exactly what he did. So it's going to be awesome that he's our manager now, and heading into 2024, I couldn't be more excited.
Absolutely. And just one last bit of manager of the year trivia I'll ask you is that since they started the award in the early 1980s, I mean, it might be 83, it could be off there, but I think that's when they started up with it. Do you know the only team who has had more manager of the year awards than the Marlins?
Wow. And it's not different individuals, it's just by team.
By team, but this also is individuals. It does turn out.
Okay.
I think it covers both. That is.
It's tough.
But let's make it individuals. More individuals.
More individuals.
This is the only team that beats the Marlins streak of having more than 4 individual recipients of the Manager of the Year award.
Wow. That's tough.
I'll give you a hint.
Give me a guess.
It's a dysfunction. As you kind of indicated, dysfunction might be the takeaway from having this many. So it's an organization that we would all, the baseball community, would recognize to be the textbook definition of dysfunction.
Wow.
Currently,
Oakland Athletics.
No, they're just textbook definition of homeless. It is the Chicago White Sox.
Okay.
Chicago White Sox have had
well,
5 different
I thank them for Jake Berger.
Pull it down the award. And yes, very happy to have Jake down here, and I would imagine Jake is very happy to be away from there. But to the word you mentioned earlier, culture, it's probably the word I've heard this individual mention most since he started being placed in front of microphones that I've listened to in the past couple of weeks. And we have the arrival of the new president of baseball operations for the Marlins. Big story, Peter Bendix. So kind of really out of nowhere, this year seemed to break, and very quickly that the Marlins are prying away the general manager, number 2 in charge of the Tampa Bay Rays, the poster child for Bruce Sherman and how to run an organization. It's a name that was not on our radar since you're very lucky to, in my opinion, to get a mind like this. But Bendix, what were your initial thoughts upon hearing that Bendix was the hire? And then you could kind of build on that from based on what he's said so far between the presser and a great interview with Kyle Seeloff about a week prior to the press conference. Where's your head at on the Bendix hire?
I'm excited. Coming over from Tampa Bay, and you really do a little research on his career trajectory and his career path. He comes into the league back in 2009 as an intern, when works his way up to the top with the same organization. And what I think is really special about the hire is, working for Tampa Bay and working for the the front office and eventually becoming a general manager. He has been ingrained in that philosophy and how the Rays run their organization, since it really started, which is a low payroll, and it's a low payroll team who develops and makes the most out of the talent they have. And now he's coming into Miami, where Bruce Sherman, the owner, has openly stated, hey, look, this isn't Tampa Bay. You're not going to be working with the 29th ranked payroll anymore. Here, what can you do? If he can have a hand in orchestrating rosters in Tampa Bay, like the 2013, Rays who make it to the ALDS, 2021 Rays who make it to the ALDS again, the World Series in 2020, like these teams, you look at them and they don't have these star-studded lineups. There are a lot of low-level trades they acquire as prospects and then build into, above average major league starters. Like Isaac Paredes, for example, is a current Tampa Bay Ray, who just kind of comes out of nowhere and Tampa turns him into a really good player. Harold Ramirez, who Tampa got from us, we discarded him and they scoop him up and turn into a solid find. Like that is what Tampa does. And it's kind of like that Moneyball mentality. And now Bendix comes over with a really strong analytical background, and now he has the money to spend. Bruce is going to spend more money than Tampa. Could not be more excited.
Yeah, definitely agree. I don't know how much more money Bruce will spend in Tampa, but I certainly believe him that the Marlins won't be 29th. Don't think that's too much of an option. They at least as long as Avisal Garcia's contract is still in the books, can't be 29th. The
legend has it we're still paying Wei and Chin too. So
you mentioned Moneyball, and I just one of my first thoughts with the Bendix hire. Certainly again, initially, excited. Do you like to have that mindset? This is kind of really the kind of put your money where your mouth is, moment. For years, Sherman has suggested that he wants the Marlins, to follow, the Rays path, and this just, with kind of the last Jeter hire kind of out the door with Ng moving on, then this is Sherman just really clearly trying to do that. Yes, they're taking the best Rays mind on, and that kind of seemed like that would have been probably the best case scenario for the Marlins going into this situation is pick the best available brain from the Rays or the Orioles and place them in this position, and that's what he did. I think we assumed some of the other names kicked about that we'd be talking about a lieutenant in the Orioles organization or another team. Didn't know we'd be able to get an actual Ray to run with this. But I also know just kind of how much invested Tampa is off the field, into realizing that vision, into doing that development. And it's just got me to thinking, like, is Bendix like on his own, enough? Like you mentioned Moneyball, so the point I was going to go with is, do you view this hire as really kind of equivalent to getting Jonah Hill from Cleveland, in the movie, where does bring in Peter Brandt, over
Right.
to the organization, is just going to show the whiteboard to Bruce and the assistant GMs, and it's going to make the team that much better in 2024. Or is Tampa's the Rays magic that he's bringing over, is that really more a product of just so many more millions that there's not really a clear public record of that is able to dig up of how much teams spend on analytics, on scouting, on development? Do you think that Bendix is going to get those off the field resources to build up the Marlins analytics department to the same level as that of the Rays, or at least the potential to reach that level? First of all, I guess a couple of questions here is, do you think that he'll get that kind of buy-in off the field for resources? And if not, how important is it that the voice at the top believes in analytics to this extent? And how different is that from what Kim had been doing?
Right. I mean, first off, I think nobody knows the Rays organization and what the front office needs within the analytical department than Peter Bendix, being as he literally started from the ground up and worked his way through each floor, each level of the front office to become a general manager. So if Peter Bendix comes into Miami and looks at the situation and takes a long look at the analytical department and says, hey, we need more resources, this isn't enough, then he's going to go to Bruce and say, we need an upgrade. You brought me in. We need to increase this. Like, that is his strength, is the sabermetrics. Like, he's a sabermetrics guy, analytics, numbers, that's his mentality. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of that new era of baseball a lot of teams are going into. So I would like to think that if he comes in and says, hey, like, what we have right now, I like the core that has already been established. I don't really need an overhaul. Then that would be great. The less change the better, I think. But if he comes in and wants to make changes, then I would imagine that he would have Bruce's ear on kind of constructing the front office, the scouting department, the analytical department to kind of fit that mindset that he's had in Tampa.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I guess it's the Marlins trauma. There's always that little bit,
It's
Marlins,
PTSD.
Of Marlins trauma. Or I'm like, just have this image of, again, let's just insert Jonah Hill's character, just being, and Bruce handing him an abacus and a typewriter, and telling him to figure it out, when he was used to using supercomputers, over across the state in Tampa, and although I guess I should say St. Petersburg. I had a fun email correcting me on an article I wrote about a week ago that the Rays are located in St. Petersburg. So in case that one individual is listening, I should stress that the resources he had in St. Petersburg. But if you make this hire, and put this stamp that you want your organization to be the Rays, I would assume that that level of buy-in is necessary. And that's something I've been long and dearly wanting, for the Marlins to do. I've always thought that the off the field stuff is an area where there really was no excuse, for the Marlins not to be at the top. Like, I understand and accept. I'm not happy about it, but I accept that the Marlins will never spend $300 million on their payroll, or $200 million, or $150 million on their payroll. But so if you can't pay someone $30 million a year, it's like, can we afford to spend like $9 million
Right.
I off the field, like on scouts, like to maximize, to make that $1 on player payroll play like $5, which is the line that Bendix used in his radio interview. That's just something they can do, or have have the nicest clubhouse, or the nicest team playing, or the nicest scouts. There's other areas, that intangibles that would like make players want to come here and get good players here. So I'm hoping that this is a sign that that is heading, in that direction. So, certainly hope he does get those resources. Another one I'm wondering is that you mentioned the Harold Ramirez trade earlier, and on the Spaces earlier tonight on JT Shargra, came up, and just thinking of those X-rays that are on the Marlins, now, and particularly in the case of JT, in the case of Jesus Sanchez, in the case of Xavier Edwards, these were all players that were dealt to the Marlins, kind of given rid of, deemed to be expendable by Tampa, by a organization where Pete was pretty high up in there. And 2019 was one of those deals. I think he was a vice president at that point, and then he was the general manager that sent over Xavier Edwards and JT, and pretty early on. I'm just kind of wondering, I guess, how he feels about those players. Certainly, they've all developed some since they've been in the Marlins organization. They've taken strides, particularly in the case of Jesus Sanchez. I don't think the Rays really thought he would take off to the extent that he did. When they made that deal, and they were all making those moves to make a team that had playoff chances, those seasons, better. But I guess I'm just kind of curious to see how that plays out. Like if those players' future on the roster has maybe changed at all, or since someone who came in who was obviously very familiar with them, was part of drafting and signing them and developing them, and just then decided that his old organization didn't need him. So does his new organization need him? Any thoughts on that? Am I overthinking it with being secured about that, worried about the future of, I guess, Xavier and Sanchez?
I don't necessarily think that, if you trade away a player, your value, the way you look at them value wise changes. In some cases, yes, but in a lot of cases, like, you need to give up value to gain value, and that's
what I'm hoping is what.
Yeah, I mean that's how what I'm thinking it is. I think both. I mean, you look at Xavier, you look at Chargois, not super experienced players. Obviously, Edwards making his major league debut in the sense of, like, this was his first real experience in the bigs. So really young players, and an opportunity, perhaps was blocked in Tampa Bay, where they got, roadblocked up there, and get a new opportunity in Miami. And now it's like, all right, so their former general manager comes in. I think it's more of an advantage where he's more familiar with their skill set and what they offer, especially analytically, maybe than the Marlins previous front office, where they're just receiving the player and not developing them.
And that's probably the positive you spin on it, is like, since those players were brought into the Rays organization at one point, are they already Rays guys, so to speak? And like, so
right.
On the one hand, worrying, are they going to be on their way out the door, perhaps? But they could also be the foundation, going on forward if they do have that Rays stamp. But yeah, that was just something just jumped out to me. Like, wow, we got a lot of guys that Tampa shipped over here.
Joey Wendell, another guy
on the roster, and on the
Thank
way
God
out.
he's
But
not
then,
coming back.
If he had a year left, he'd be right in this conversation, though, as a guy that was maximized, that had his best seasons with Tampa. And while I think that's the textbook example of Tampa, getting max value and sending him on to another team. Like, they saw something coming, when they made that deal. But then I don't know if he had a year left on his contract, or one more random arbitration. I'd be wondering on that one too, if we thought he was gone, but if that'd be a case where Bendix came in and said, well, wait a minute, actually, you guys were using him wrong. But no, I would say we don't need to worry about that one. In terms of how this offseason plays out, do you think there is anything that will change now from what you expected to be the case? So, like, late September, very, very early October, when the playoffs were still going, as we started to think about what the next moves were going to be made whenever the Marlins run ended, and presumably with Kim, driving those decisions, has your vision of what plays out this offseason changed at all since Kim's gone and now Bendix is the one making those choices.
Not that it's changed in the sense of I think there's going to be a drastically different vision between Kim and now Bendix. I don't think that's the case. I think that there has been some decisions made by the organization that has certainly impacted the vision for this offseason. The big ones being the decision of Josh Bell to accept the option and return to Miami, as well as the Marlins' decision to decline their team option on Jorge Soler, $20 million, I believe. And now Soler is a free agent. And now you're kind of wondering, where does all your power come from? And then, of course, the news of Sandy Alcantara at the end of the season that he was going to go undergo Tommy John surgery, and he did. And we all pray for him and wish him a speedy recovery. But that leaves such a giant hole in the rotation. So I think, Bendix is going to come in, and I think Kim would have done the same thing. And look, we need power and we need rotation depth. I think those are the two biggest glaring needs at the Marlins that the Marlins are facing right now. We talk a lot about the pitching for the Marlins, but yes, they have talented pitching, but you need depth, and the hitting. If you don't re-sign Jorge Soler, where's that power production going to come from? You're going to lose a huge chunk of that middle of the lineup bat, and that power production. So those are my two questions. And I think Bendix obviously knows that, and that should be the goals of the Marlins moving forward to the offseason. Those should be goals 1A, 1B type scenario.
Okay. On the surface, some of the major decisions, those obviously stay the same. The Marlins still have massive holes in their lineup at catcher and short, and they need to fill those. And that was the case. And that's the case now. It was the case in the late September, early October, and it was the case in July. Those are problems. So that's not news that they need to fill that. But I did think there's maybe more of a possibility, and probably particularly where it'd be realized, and this is where I guess my guards up might be the way to put it, is in relation to Sandy. I needed to fill that kind of spot in the rotation. I think under Kim, I would have thought it'd be more likely that the Marlins might move up might spend a little more on that pitching ad. I mean, I don't think they're signing a pitcher to more than a 2-year contract. I think it's that range of everyone from Jack Flaherty to Kenta Maeda to my dream is Seth Lugo. Some of the reports on him have him signing a 2-year deal. Some have him as valued much more higher, as I understand, because I really like the player, as to a 3-4 year contract that I don't think the Marlins could afford, but like that level, like Lugo being the absolute cap, and then on down to reclamation projects and guys on proven deals. But under Kim, I thought it was more likely that the Marlins throw $20 million at a starter or something. And
I agree. I agree with that.
And with Pete, I'm less sure. Maybe another way to put it is that I think that there's going to be, certainly be pressure to build on the success of 2023. The Marlins, they can't do a teardown from a PR standpoint. They just can't. They won't survive. They won't survive doing that. And there's enough, kind of bones on the roster to not do that. Still a lot of pitching depth. There's reasons to squint and feel positive. But if there's like a mandate of how much could be spent, I think it was more. And if I'll just make up a number, if Bruce said, and this is including now money that's freed up from not having to pay Soler and not having to pay Stallings, but there's $30 million, signed players on it. I think it was probably more likely that Kim might spend it on two players and add to the roster, and I can see Bendix spending it on 5, spreading it around, and that's kind of what we're looking for, for those dollars to play up. That's the advantage of having that kind of raise magic working for you, that analytically driven mindset to maximize value. And so I guess I'd be a little surprised if they signed someone to a significant deal. There was a report that the Marlins were still linked to Jorge Soler. I saw another report today. Lourdes Gurriel. I guess like these kind of deals would surprise me if they commit. That I'd be thrilled to see it happen in most cases. But I'm skeptical of big price tags attached. I think money will be spent and holes will be filled, but I think it'll mostly be trades and the just the kind of the big ticket kind of free agent. I feel like that's less likely than it was. Could be totally wrong. We'll see. But I guess that's where my head's at it as a slight change. But at the end of the day, I still expect the team to be better in 2024 than 2023. So we're still
that's
winning.
The goal. Like
we're still winning. So
competitive progression. And I agree with you 100%. I think with the addition of Bendix, I think that you're not going to see these deals where it's like, take a look at the list of free agents and just go through, three of them and ink them the big deals, and now your payroll's bloated, and we might end up with Avi Garcia, part 2. That would be terrible. Now, don't get me wrong, there are free agents I think that I would love to see Miami go after. Mitch Garver is somebody who I would love to see the Marlins reach out and spend some money on. He's not going to command a huge, contract, but like you said, catcher and shortstop, absolute black holes offensively the last couple seasons. Go out and fix them. When it comes to like the rotation, that's where you can kind of finesse, the depth pieces, where you can look for guys on the Rule 5 draft coming up. You can look for, guys that have just been DFA'd. You mentioned Seth Lugo. Another name I want to quickly throw out there is Cal Quantrill from Cleveland, was just DFA'd. Surprising to me because I know he had a rough season, but you look at the numbers before, the dude was pitching really well. Love to see Miami, try to get him and put him in the rotation as a depth piece. I think that would be huge. So, between DFAs and, Rule 5 draft and low-level trades, I think you're going to see this Marlins team have the depth heading into 2024, and we'll be able to sit back and feel good about ourselves and feel good about, the position we're in, where we're not like going into 2022 where we're saying, what the hell are we doing? We have no bullpen, no lineup.
right.
This is shit,
Yeah, something I probably should have to have rounded off my point was that I think this could very well be the better approach. The approach is spreading the money and the resources out. But I certainly there are players that are worth the money to spend on hypothetically. But yeah, I think that so this could certainly be the way that makes more sense for the Marlins is spreading the wealth. So it's something they have going for them with the shortstop and catcher black holes is the fact that they were just so bad. Added last year, that really any improvement, is a you could argue is a significant game changing positive, for this Marlins roster. So they don't necessarily need to sign the superstar shortstop, the superstar catcher. Adequate play would be.
And if we look back,
would be.
If we look back, you look at the moves the Marlins made at the time when they got Jacob Stallings and Joey Wendell. Joey Wendell was coming off an all-star season. That wasn't a low, tiny trade. That was like, hey, the Marlins got former all-star Joey Wendell. And same thing
I did cartwheels coming out of work.
Yeah, and look how it turned out. It blew up in our faces. Same with Jacob Stallings. It was awful. Like, Stallings was supposed to fix the offensive woes and be the best defensive shortstop, the Marlins have had since Jeff Mathis. Shout out Jeff. But it didn't work out. So I don't want to see that happen again.
No, absolutely. And since we mentioned Rule 5 draft, we'll just kind of close here tonight with just a little talk. So the Marlins had to make some 40-man roster decisions today. We've got plenty of space to play with on that 40-man roster. They protected Anthony Maldonado, but they opted not. And of course, Victor. Shouts to Derek Jeter's first passion project with the Marlins organization. But ultimately, that was ultimately the correct move to see them shore him up. But what surprised everybody, I think, was the decision to not protect Troy Johnson. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
No, I tweeted out, I think, about a couple hours before the deadline of the 40-man roster there, that the three guys I personally would want to see protected was Troy Johnson, Anthony Maldonado, and Will Banfield, who had a really solid breakout season in Double-A. But Johnston, the fact that they left him unprotected just really shocked me, because he's immediately going to be gone and move on to a better, not a better, but a different organization. And it confuses me, because you look at the numbers and you say, what is there not to like from a hitting perspective? He can hit for power and he can hit for average. And he, in 2023, when he got promoted to AAA, he hit over 320 with 8 bombs. And I'm going to pull up the numbers here, 51 games, but still 220 plus at bats, hitting over 320 in AAA. For me, he had nothing left to prove and would go into spring training as a guy expected to compete for an opening day roster spot. So, to leave him unprotected, again, trust the process, because like you said, maybe there's another guy that Bendix is like, no, I think this player is going to provide more long-term value than Troy would. Troy is also going on 27 years old. He's an older prospect, played college ball. So I'm not terribly upset, because I want to see what Bendix has up his sleeve.
Yeah, we were talking before the show, and yes, I've certainly. This is with the Bendix hire. I mean, as soon as the Marlins make a Rule 5 pick and they pick another first baseman, we're going to be like, oh, that Rays guy, he sees something, and we'll be and fans will be excited about it until March. But you've got the numbers there. What was Johnson's on base percentage?
Let's see. So in 2023, his on base percentage was .399.
Yeah, so I mean, he gets on he gets on base. It's the
Yeah.
Moneyball meme with that. Just it makes didn't make sense to me amongst Marlins hitters in the minors. This was the guy I was excited to see. Really the only player I was like, you know what, I'm looking forward to in 2024, seeing this guy get some major league at bats. Yeah, and I could not say that of anyone else. The next 5 players on the list of Marlins prospects, I felt that way, were all pitchers that I wanted to see make an appearance. So definitely took me by surprise, but. And we've been here before. I saw someone mention this on Twitter, like flashing back to the Griffin Conine decision, and that shocked me too when the Marlins didn't protect him, but he made it through. He made it through because his best asset from a Marlins fan perspective is he hits the ball really hard, and his last name is Conine. He has some horrible strikeout issues, just
something that
not
Johnson
resolved at the time, have still not been resolved. But that was not the case of Johnson. Johnson's he's not a good defensive player, but the Marlins haven't seemed that concerned about that the last couple of years about defensive ability. It's about they need to fix the offense, and it made no sense to me. But as we were just talking about, a couple Rule 5 picks later, couple signings, plucking people off waivers, and I guess we'll just have to trust. We'll trust in Pete that that he knows what he's doing, and that the computer said something. One thing that was mentioned on the Marlins Spaces Fish on First put out was there was some deliberation, and this would be the only thing that I guess would really concern me if this was the case, was that maybe it was questioned how involved Bendix was in that decision. Like if this was the decision of the people who had been in the organization, more familiarity with the player, or this was Bendix kind of new direction driven. I'd feel better about the choice if I thought this was the new guy who cranked out an algorithm on his laptop that he brought up from Tampa and said, actually we don't need this, as opposed to just a continuation of the the policy which frustrated fans for half of last season, honestly, to keep this player down and chip away, to not bring him up, in place of Yuli Gurriel, not bring him up in place
Yeah.
of, any other players. At one point, Wendell, honestly, just reshuffle the team around to just get the best lineup, out there. And so that's the only part. It's like, ooh, if that's the case, then
Then it would feel like a waste. It really would feel like a waste of a really good, hitter. Like Troy Johnson can flat out hit the ball. And if Bendix didn't make that decision, and obviously this is speculation, but if he's not the guy making a decision, then I think it would be a total waste of a, 40-man roster spot, because he should be on there.
Yeah, absolutely. There were multiple open spots. As far as I understand the rules, it's not like that's something that's forever burned, or there'd really be any harm to having that full. And there's going to be more open spots. It's not like they're going to keep Jacob Stallings. But once you start
exactly. That's the other thing.
Like there's going to be more. We'll have to wait and see. But I just wanted to go through some of the recent Marlins news. Thanks for jumping on here and talking some Peter Bendix with me. Anything you want to promote before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, just again, thank you for having me on the show. It's always great to be on. Marlins IX, host of that podcast over there. So if you're listening to this, chances are you've probably listened to my podcast. But if you haven't, go check it out. And keep following Marlins After Dark. Sean puts out really good content, and it's always a pleasure to come on to the show and just kind of have these nice conversations about the Marlins and baseball, at 12:12 in the morning. Like, what could be better on the East Coast for all your East Coasters out here?
For all the East Coast fans. So this was a true Marlins After Dark throwback there. We've tried to make the last much of the last season was more about after sunset than after midnight, but we're back to Marlins After Midnight.
It's in the name.
For tonight. Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, for Jeremiah, for myself, this was Marlins After Dark, and we'll catch you next time. Go Fish.